All right. So just as said last time, let's begin by talking about the concept of short run and long run, because these are concepts and you need them. So I'm repeating them probably to those who were there in the class, but I'm repeating this one. Is very critical and important. So what we said and what we are saying is that during the fixed, okay, the short run period, in the short run period, what we get to have is that the short run period will be defined as the time frame in which there are fixed factors of production. There are fixed factors of production. In other words, or the reference of this would be at least one variable is what is fixed. That is called the short run period. It's not really the time that to say short run, it means 2 days or 1 week, 1 month. No, that's what it means. So that's the short run period. But when we talk about long run period, on the other hand, it's defined as just basically the time horizon over which the manager can adjust all factors of production. That is to say, when all factors of production are variable, when all inputs are variable, meaning they're able to change, they're not fixed. And that period is defined as the long run period. We have got some of the critical measures that I would still want to re-echo. Measures of productivity. We're looking at production and cost afterwards. So when you're measuring productivity, we find that the managers, when they're making decisions, they need to understand that it is important, okay, to understand the productivity of the inputs that they use in the production process. How productive are the inputs that they use in the production process? That is very, very important. So the key measures that we use for production are, number one, total product, average product, and the marginal product. So I'll write them as the total product. A total product is one of the measures, and the average product. From average product, you have what is called the marginal product. All these are the three measures of productivity. They help us to measure how productive the inputs that we have used are. Now, let's start from total product. What about total product? So with the total product, this refers to as the maximum level of output that can be produced with a given amount of the inputs. The maximum level of output that we can produce from the given amount of inputs is said. Okay. All right. I was getting some background. Okay, I was saying the maximum level of output. Remember, when you're producing, you get different inputs. You mix them together using different types of technology in the production process, and then you get the output, or you get those finished goods that we call the output. Now, when you want to measure the maximum level of output that you can produce with a given level of inputs, then that is called the total product. Okay. For example, the total product of the production process described in the table down here. There is a certain table. Let me just skip this table. I'll talk about the table when the table comes. In short, what you're trying to say is that the take-home message is, once you employ a certain input, for example, labor, you find that labor will lead into a certain output. You use that labor to produce some output. Okay. So whatever the maximum level of output that can be produced from labor, it is said to be the total product of labor. If you use capital, for example, again, capital, that would mean those fixed capital would be buildings, rent, all those things, machines. Once you use them to produce something, whatever you produce is called the output. That is called the total product of capital, which is basically the total contribution of that particular input. Just trying to run you through the same study for yesterday in the first few minutes so that you can connect to cost. Average product. About average product, we said that always when you're producing, for example, let's say when you're producing output, you produce a certain level of output. Most of the times, the decision makers are interested in getting the average productivity of an input. And what do we mean by average productivity of an input? It simply means that we want to examine the contribution of each unit of that input to the output. So for example, in the practical sense, for example, you produce 2,000 chairs. You produce 2,000 chairs using 10 people, only 10 people. So it means that when you divide this 10 into what? Into the 2,000, you find that on average, each person is equivalent to what? To 200 chairs. You get, each person is equivalent to 200 chairs on average. So when you're examining the average product, you just want to get the average productivity, like how much each individual, okay, each individual input contributes to the what? To the total level of output. And the last one on the measures that I need to comment on is the issue of marginal product that I said, or we are saying. It's basically, we are saying that the marginal product of an input refers to the change in total output that is attributed to the last unit of an input. Okay. So we are saying that when total output changes, for the reason that you have increased what input, and there has been an additional input, then that change is called the marginal product. The addition, just some additional increase in output as a result of an additional unity to the total input. Then that is called the marginal product of that particular input. It can be the marginal product of labor. It can be the marginal product of capital, depending on whatever variable that you have. All right. Maybe, okay, not about this. What is more important here? Okay, measuring cost now. This is where I wanted to reach quickly. How do we measure cost now? Just as I said that you cannot just produce. The firms don't just produce without incurring costs. They always incur what we call costs, okay? So you need to understand the different types of costs that the firms incur. And we begin now. Let me be slow a bit now. There is what we call total costs, okay? Total costs. The total economic cost of production consists of total production, or total cost consists of the fixed costs plus the variable costs. We explain this like in detail. You need this. This is very crucial now. You need it. I'm saying total cost. Total cost of production is basically fixed cost plus what? Variable costs. Okay, fixed cost plus the variable cost. That forms what you call the total economic cost. Now, what are fixed costs? These simple definitions are very, very important because they help they help the examiner to see whether you understand what you are really learning or what you need to know. For example, we talk about the fixed cost. The fixed cost is said that it does not vary with the level of what? Of output. And that it can only be eliminated by shutting down. I'll repeat what we mean by this. Fixed costs, those are costs that don't change with the level of what? Of output. Whether you increase production or whether you increase production or you don't, but the fixed costs remain fixed costs. Anyone to give me an example of fixed cost in production? Anyone? Just anyone.
Machinery.
Machinery. Fixed costs.
Labor.
Fixed cost.
Labor is one of the fixed costs in business also.
Okay, labor does not change with the level of output. Are we sure? All right. Okay. Don't worry, we are getting there. So listen now. What is there with the fixed cost? It means that even if you, let me use the practical example so that you can easily get it quickly. You have labor and capital. Let's say capital, you are using a building, that's rent, is capital. You are only using one building, okay? One building. As you are just using one building to produce whatever you are producing, then what will happen is that the rent will be fixed. Most of the times the rent is fixed. Whether you make a lot of profit in that using that building or not, the rent is usually just fixed around that amount. Okay, it could be, for example, you are renting a shop in town here in Lusaka or anywhere. Whether you make a lot of profit that month, the landlord cannot come to say, now you have made a lot of profit. Can we increase the the rent? I don't think that happens. I don't know where, if it happens somewhere. What will happen is that whether you produce more or not, rent is what? Is fixed. But when it comes to the issues of labor sometimes may vary. There are some other variables that you can change. They increase some costs that increase. Remember, labor is not a cost. It's an input, okay, of which the cost for labor is wages. You know those things. Those are costs like wages. So what we mean is that you can sometimes in the quest to produce more, there are those costs that increase because you have increased production. Take for example, you now want to increase production. Sometimes maybe you might be forced to increase the number of workers. Okay, the number of people that are working, then the salary, it means the wages increase. I'm sure you're getting the idea around the fixed cost. In short, they remain constant, whether you increase production or even if you have not made losses. For example, you have not sold. It is possible that that day you have not sold, that week you have not sold, that month you go under, you have not made enough sales, but the cost for rent, for example, will be fixed. Are we good on fixed costs? I've just commented on one example so that you can relate with other examples. Hello.
Yes, sir.
All right. On the variable costs. On what? On variable costs. What about on variable costs? These, they vary with the level of output. Now, you see, you have to pay attention to this. This is very important. for example, you can be asked this question. Let's ask you this question. True or false? Okay. Does variable cost remains fixed as output increases? Not just those same simple things that require you to get the concepts. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to show you that you need the principles and the concepts. So variable cost varies with output. Now, this is the difference. This one, once you increase the output, even the cost increases. You know that? Once you want to do more, you produce more, you find that even other costs will start now rising and developing, okay? Those, we call them the variable costs. Once you reduce production, those costs again start coming down. We call those as the variable costs. Then the average total costs. Average total cost is basically total cost divided by what? Output. Total cost divided by output Q is equal to average what? Average total costs or average costs. Okay. Average cost or average total cost is basically total cost divided by output. That is very important. You need that. I'm showing you now cost theory. They are what you call average fixed costs. With average fixed cost, average fixed cost is basically the fixed cost divided by what? Output. These equations are very necessary. You need them. Sometimes the way how some of the questions will be structured, yeah, they might be multiple choice of true or false, but they might require you solve somewhere, right somewhere. So it is important to get these formulas and understand how they work. How do you find average fixed cost? Average fixed cost is just basically fixed cost divided by what? Output. Then average variable costs. Average variable costs. Average variable cost, AVC is basically average variable cost divided by what? By output. Variable cost divided by output is average variable cost. Fixed cost divided by output is what? Average fixed costs. Get these equations. Very, very necessary. And you need them. Okay. Then from there, yeah, don't worry about questions. We'll do questions, but I want you to understand the concepts. That's when you appreciate the questions. We cannot just rush direct into the question part before you can get these concepts. Okay. You see, when you are given a table like this one, for example, this is a table. This table has got output. This is output, the column for output. The column for fixed cost. You've seen that the fixed cost is just fixed, regardless of the level of output. From 0 output up to 11, it's just fixed at 50. Then the variable cost is this one, okay? You're given this column for variable costs and for the total for the total costs. Then you are asked to find imagine there is no column now for marginal cost. Let us imagine there is no column for marginal cost. How do we find the marginal cost column? Let me erase this. This is very important. How do you find the marginal costs? How do you find marginal costs?
Change in total cost over change in output.
Thank you. So the change in the total cost over the change in what? In output. Okay, just like the one that we had yesterday, was it marginal what? It was marginal even. The same way how you treat that one. So our total cost at the first unit when output is 0 is still 0 here. Then you start now. The next, the change in total cost will be 50 minus 100 minus 50 gives us what? 50. Like 100 minus 50 divided by output is 1 minus 0, which is giving us 50. So you start writing here, you write 50, right? Then the next one will be 128 minus 100 divided by 2 minus 1. This 2 minus 1, the change in output. It is basically 28, okay? Then you say 148 now minus 148 minus 128. What does that give us?
20.
20. So you write what? You write your 20, okay? Then you say 162 minus 142. That gives us another schedule. So in short, that's how they were finding this schedule, which is here, which is ongoing. You just keep on subtracting and subtracting to reach down, okay? That's how you find marginal costs. Is that clear? Are we fine with the issue of marginal costs?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Are we fine with the issue of marginal cost? Well, if you understand these numbers, it means you understand the principles. Okay, assuming that the silence means that people have heard and they have gotten what it means. Average fixed cost. What did we say? How do we find average fixed cost? We want to find average fixed cost. We're just trying to appreciate the use of those formulas that I was giving you. How do we find this column for average fixed costs? How do we find average fixed costs? Hello.
We divide fixed cost by output.
We said, I just wrote that previously in the previous slide. I said the average fixed cost is basically fixed cost divided by what? By output. And what is our fixed cost? We have is 50, right? The first one is 50 divided by 0. The output is 0. That's why you have what? 0 here, right? Then the next one, 1 divided by 50 is what? Is 50. The next one is 2 divided by 50, which is 20 what? 25. 3 divided by 50, it gives us something like 16.7. Okay. Then 4 divided by 50 is 12.5. 5 divided by 50, it is what? It is 10. So you just keep on doing that. And whatever you get, that schedule is called the schedule for average fixed cost. Did you get that?
Yes, we do.
The table is meant to cement the concept. All right, so that's basically how they were finding these numbers as you go down. You basically divide every output into these fixed costs. All right, then how do you find average variable costs? Average variable costs. Obviously, it's variable cost divided by what? By output, isn't it? That's what we just said. So you know where variable cost is? This is your variable what? Your variable cost. Remember that from here, we were assuming we don't have all these. We are asked to fill in, okay? Just asked to fill in. So how do you find the average? Okay, I've said this variable cost divided by output. So in short, where we are dividing by 50, now we are dividing by variable cost, not by fixed cost. It will be still the same thing. The 0 divided by 0, 0, okay? And what is, oh, it is 0 here. Then what is 1 divided by this 50 again? It is 50, okay? 2 divided by 78 is 39, right? And the 3 divided by 98, 32.7. So you just keep dividing like this output you have into the what? Into the variable cost. Each output into the variable cost, each output into the variable cost. Then you have this schedule for average variable costs. Did you get that? Okay.
Yes, sir.
We go to average total cost. How do you think we find average total cost? We say that average total cost will be given as what? How do you find average total cost now? Hello.
Total cost divided by output.
Total cost divided by what? By output. That's what we just said in the previous slide. You divide the output into the total cost, and our total cost is this one now. So you are dividing by this what? By this output. So that's how we find the what? These averages. And that's how you find these averages. This is how we find the marginals and the total products of cost here. Sorry, the total costs. Any question? It is clear, sir, we have heard. Okay. Now that we have heard, these are the graphs, because the graphs are also important sometimes. This is the graph. On the horizontal axis, there is output. On the vertical axis, there is what? There is cost. So the fixed cost graph is horizontal like this. This is fixed cost. Why should it be horizontal? It's because it is not changing with the level of what? Output. In other words, there is no relationship between these costs and the level of output. Did we get that? Okay, we got that. Then how do you find now the variable costs? So basically, this is the graphical representation thereof. So this is variable cost. The variable cost starts from 0, unit 0, and it is rising like that. That's variable cost. But with total cost is basically the sum. Okay, total cost is the sum of fixed cost, and this what? This is our variable cost. Our variable cost, let's have, this is our horizontal axis, our fixed cost, then our variable cost is crossing here. This is our variable cost. Now with total cost, the total cost will be this one in blue. It always starts from, it's the sum of these two, okay? Total cost is the sum of fixed cost and the variable cost. So once you add the fixed cost and the variable cost, that's why the graph starts on top of fixed cost. It's always higher than all these two. Like it's always high because it's the total sum thereof. Any question? The graphs are very important to see how they behave. Yeah, it is very important to understand the behavior of the graphs. Then, what about the graphs for the averages now? This is the one now. If you have observed, I need to draw something that is clear and that is visible, you know. Let me redraw this same thing so that you can see it. Okay. Just as usual, you have cost here. Here you have output. The fixed cost, the graph for the fixed cost now, for average fixed cost, it is asymptotic to the horizontal axis. So to be asymptotic simply means that, listen, it's asymptotic, meaning it comes closer and closer. Check the way how it moves. This is the average fixed cost. It comes closer and closer to the horizontal axis, but it never touches the horizontal axis or the axis for output, this one. It doesn't. This is the fixed cost. It comes closer and closer, comes down and closer, but they will never touch and it will never cross. That's the graph for average, oh, not fixed cost, for average fixed cost. We know that for fixed cost is straight, right? This is fixed cost. But for average fixed cost, it is asymptotic to the what? It is asymptotic. Just get that it is asymptotic to the horizontal axis. Then now, the average variable cost is U-shaped. Let me use the blue one. Where is the blue? Right. The average variable cost, it's here. It's U-shaped. A, B, C, average variable costs. That's average variable costs. Average variable costs. And our average total cost is higher than average variable cost. And I think we can even try to say one or two things. The reason to why, as to why. What could be the reason as to why? I use the black marker. Then the marginal cost is cutting all these at minimum. Marginal costs, AVC. Now, my question is, why do you think the marginal cost first cuts the average variable cost before it can cut the average total cost? Or in short, why is this one first before total cost? Why should the marginal cost cut the average variable cost before cutting the average total cost? An idea? You've seen that the marginal cost is cutting all these at their minimum point. They are U-shaped, if you have observed all of them. Average variable cost and the average total cost, they are U-shaped, but it first cuts. It has to first cut the average variable cost before cutting the average total cost. What could be the reason?
Hello?
Yes.
Hello? Sir, just a try. I think before we find the total cost, we have to find these other costs like the variable cost and the fixed cost. Then after that, that's when we can know the total cost. Maybe.
Okay, interesting. That's a good one. Any other or additional? Right. Why should the marginal cost cross the average variable cost and the average total cost at their minimum? And if first start with the average variable cost, why should it? Okay. If you've observed, it is always that the average variable cost will be lower than the average total cost. Why? Because the average total cost, it is the sum of average fixed cost plus the average variable cost. Once you add the average fixed cost plus average variable cost, that's when you get the average total cost. So the average total cost is always higher, okay? The average total cost is always higher. It's as simple as that. The average total cost is always higher than the average variable cost. Why? Because the total costs, where we get the average total cost, is always higher than the variable costs. Right? Did you get that one? So I was trying to explain this concept, this part, because the question can, why? Yeah, the concept just says that the marginal cost crosses the average variable cost and the average total cost curves at their minimum. Is that true or false? You know, this same statement, if you find it in an exam, can be that confusing in where you have true or false. especially that if you don't know, you have never heard of that. Is that true or false? Marginal cost curve crosses the average variable cost and the average total cost at their minimum, meaning since they are U-shaped at this down part. That is very true, but that's the understanding. We want to do the reason is because all the time the average total cost is always higher than what average variable cost. Why? Because we derive the average total cost from the total cost and the average variable cost from the variable cost. And the total cost is always higher than the variable cost if the fixed cost is not equal to 0. But if you fix the cost is equal to 0, I'm investigating this so that you understand this. Imagine, is that true or false? That total cost is equal to variable cost if you fix the cost is equal to 0. Those statements, they sound simple, but if you have never heard of them and you have never read about that, it can be that confusing. So always the total cost will be equal to variable cost if and only if fixed cost is equal to what? To 0. And at the same time, total cost will be equal to fixed cost if the variable cost is equal to what? Is equal to 0. Hope you're getting that. Is that true or false? That when you subtract the total cost minus the variable cost, you get the fixed cost. So these equations, like they can bring a lot of questions. Questions can come from here, even true or false. Just that try to investigate your understanding of these equations and how you manipulate them. Yeah, you need to be conversant with that. Please learn to play with these equations, and that's what we are doing right now. And I'm happy that you're learning. Any question from anyone?
Sir.
Sir.
Sorry. If maybe they can ask, why is it that maybe the marginal cost of the variable cost is U-shaped? How can you answer that one?
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. It's a very good question and an excellent question. Why is the marginal cost U-shaped? Why are they U-shaped? The shortest answer that I would give is because of the economies of the scale, the economies and diseconomies of the scale. Okay, though that answer sounds so technical, because of the economies of scale and diseconomies means of scale. Now these two are the main reason as to why these shapes are U-shaped. Okay, they are the main reason as to why and the technical reason as to why these shapes are U-shaped. Now maybe try to break it down a bit. What is the economies of scale? Anyone with some understanding? What do you think economies of scale is? I'm not rushing because I want you to understand the concepts. You know, when you are given the questions under true or false, you need the concepts. Like you need to have understood the concepts. Yeah. Anybody? Economies of the scale. All right. Economies of the scale is one of the concepts that we use in economics to refer to the advantages. I'm trying to make it, I'm not being technical now. I'm trying to speak, this is English now. Let me use English so that it becomes that simple. Economies of the scale are the advantages that a business undergoes or enjoys as a result of growth. Okay, as a business grows, it starts enjoying some benefit of growth, such as maybe advertising. Once your business starts growing, like it's a bigger thing, obviously you don't need to struggle in advertising. You know, there are reduction in terms of the costs because maybe advertising costs have reduced. You know, there are those some of the advantages, like a lot of advantages that come with the reason of what, as a result of growth. So what happens is that, check, when you have just started the business, the costs are still high. That's why even the marginal cost is like this. It starts from up. The costs are still high, right? Are still high up to a certain level. Then as they are high, what happens is that as the business is growing, these same costs are reducing, and they're reducing and reducing up to a certain level. Then again, the costs will start what? Will start rising. Okay. In the time when these costs are decreasing, we call that period as enjoying the economies of the scale. You're enjoying the economies of the scale because the costs are reducing because of your growth. But again, there will be that point whereby your costs start increasing because of growth. Like maybe again, when you become too big, of course, maybe your costs will start increasing, administration costs, you know, and other costs. Obviously, if you are only one center, maybe one administration, you need to establish maybe 5 in different parts of the country. You need supervisors there, people, like the costs have started again rising because of your growth. Then the rising of the costs because of your growth is called the DC economies of the scale. You've gotten that one. Yes, Madam NLS, I'm sharing the screen. Someone is asking if I'm sharing the screen. Are you able to see the screen? But
Yes, we're able.
Yes, we
Yeah.
are.
okay, thank you. So now, one of the other ways to look at it is in this way. As the average cost, check that time. As the average cost is what? As the average costs are decreasing. No, as the marginal costs, because the other question would be, why are these curves? Because these curves, the average total cost, the average variable, they are U-shaped, right? That's what we say. Why are they U-shaped? And why should they be cut at the minimum? Why should the marginal cost cut at their minimum? Okay, it's because as the average costs, average costs, average variable costs, average total cost, this is the marginal costs, okay? As the marginal cost is rising, what will happen before it meets the average variable cost? Then once it is still, when the marginal cost is still lower than the average variable cost, it will be pulling the average variable cost downward towards it, okay? Yeah, I'm not confusing, just follow. As the marginal cost is still lower than the what? Before it meets the average variable cost, we mean it is still lower. Once the marginal cost is still lower than the average variable cost, it will be pulling the what? The average variable cost. That's why the average variable cost is moving what? Downward. It's being pulled. It's moving downward. But immediately the marginal cost crosses the average variable cost, right? Then it starts pulling again this what? Average variable cost. The average variable cost is being pulled by the marginal cost. Check. Once this marginal cost is above this, again it will start pulling this upward. This side now, it will start pulling this upward. Whilst again, when the marginal cost is still below the average total cost, it will be pulling the total cost downward. Immediately it crosses the total cost. The total cost is pulled what? It is pulled upward. So basically, it will end up forming the U shape that you are seeing. Is the questionnaire fine with the brief explanation thereof?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. On the issues of the revenues, what is the revenue now? The revenue of the firm is basically the amount that the firm earns by selling the goods or the services in a given period of a time. Let's say a year. So whatever amount you earn is called what? Your revenue of the firm. How do we find revenue? Because those are just important things. Revenue is basically price times what? Times quantity. That's how you get or output if you want. That's how you get revenue. Okay, total revenue. But when I'm talking about revenue, I'm talking about total revenue in this context. So that's how you get that, and that is what is just important for you to get. Let's have the revenue again table for the revenues. Okay, in first year, you don't need to struggle much. Your economics is full of definitions. Like you are just still defining the things. Really, like you haven't started really doing like deeper economics. You are just defining. That's why it is called principles of economics. Principles means introductions. Like you're just defining. So you are just doing much of definitions and the graphs, trying to introduce you to the concepts. So you don't need to struggle much. So you pay attention to those simple things. They really matter. Now, we have another table. We have output here. We have price, okay? Imagine there was no total revenue. There is also total profit. There is total profit, or there is total cost, sorry. Then there is for profit. There, imagine also there was no profit, so that you learn something. I want you to learn something here. Then they say, can you fill in the schedule? Find the schedule for total revenue. How do you find total revenue? We have already said that it is price times what? Times the output. Total revenue is price times the output. So you just start multiplying this output times the price here. It will be 0 because there is nothing. Then here you say 1 times 21, right? It will give us this 21. 2 times 20, giving us what? 40. 3 times 19, giving us 57. And you continue just like that, multiplying and multiplying, okay? Why should you multiply? Because we have said, I've already said that revenue is price times quantity. Total costs, then profit. How do you find profit now? They say profit is always the difference between total revenue minus total costs. Get this one? This is very crucial, important. You need it. We are saying that total revenue minus cost, it gives us what? Profit. That's how we find this schedule for profits. We just subtract total revenue minus what? Minus total cost. So 0 minus 10, that's negative 10. 21 minus 25, negative 4. 40 minus that, giving us 4. 30 minus that, 13. You get it? 85 minus 59, 26. You just continue like that. So that's how you find the total profit, because you're basically subtracting total costs from the total revenue to get profit. Hello?
We are following, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Then maybe we can add another column. The column for marginal revenue and the marginal cost and marginal profit. Yeah. Marginal revenue, marginal cost, marginal profit. Let's start with the one for marginal revenue. It will be here. For marginal revenue, it should be here. How do you find marginal revenue? What did we say? What did we say? So it is basically the change in what? Change in what? Change in total revenue over the change in output. Total revenue, you see, this one. So the first one will be the first one. There has been not change in the first unit. So the second unit, 21 minus, 0, giving us 21 minus, or divided by 1 minus 0. That is 21, isn't it? Then the next one will be 40 minus 21. And that should be what? What will be the marginal cost? Marginal revenue, not marginal cost.
19.
19. And the 57 minus 40, 57 minus 40.
17.
Oh, 17. Okay, then it's 72 minus 57.
15.
Okay, 15. In short, going down, you just continue in the same way to fill in this. That's how you go. Even total costs, for marginal cost, you do it now for total cost. That minus that, that minus that, that minus that, you keep on subtracting. The first one will be 10 here. Then if that minus that, 5, 15. Is it 15? Yeah, should be 15. 25 minus 10, 15. 36 minus 25 is what?
11.
11. Okay, so you continue now for total cost. For marginal profit, again, you do that to profit now. Once you do that to profit, the first one will be negative 10. Then you say negative 4 minus 10 should give you positive 6. 4 minus 4, it will give you what? 0, right? 13 minus 4, giving you 9. Just like that, then you continue. 21 minus 13, you are moving downward up to that again. It will help you how to fill in these schedules. Do we still have anyone with a challenge with how we play around these things? There isn't much complicated. It is just the graphs and these tables, just that. And then maybe a little bit of equations. I was telling you, once you have the equations, then you differentiate them. Differentiate them. Use first power, those power things. Just differentiate the equation to get the marginals. Okay. I'm trying to say, if you have the total costs, maybe total cost equation written as 2q squared plus q. You just differentiate this to get the marginal cost. Marginal cost will be the derivative of this. You derive this with respect to q. That should give you 4q plus 1. Just like that. So differentiate the equation. I think that was already echoed in the previous study yesterday. All right. Okay. I think marginal cost, marginal revenue, we cannot keep on repeating the same things and again and again. So let me call for questions. Do I have any question? Any question from anyone? Hello? Is there any question from anyone? Okay. Try to have a view of this one now. Let's look at this one. This was an assignment. Okay. But even this one now will be more straightforward. I think so. Okay. But let's look at it. Question number 1. You are given the following data concerning the production costs and the average revenues of the profit maximizing firm that produces good X. The fixed costs are fixed at what? 100. So have you heard the fixed costs have been given? Right? The fixed costs are 100 kwacha. And you know that the fixed costs don't change with the level of output, which means if you are to form the column for fixed cost here, where is it? For fixed cost, it will be just 100, 100 up to down here, just 100, because they are fixed costs. Given this schedule, the question number 1 says, given the tables above, calculate the total variable costs. You are given the average variable cost, the column for average variable cost. They just want you to find the column for total costs. How can you find the total cost given average variable cost? You need to go back to the formula now. This is what I was telling you. How do you find, first examine, how do you find average variable cost? Average variable cost is what? It is what? It is total variable costs equal to what? Oh, divided by what? Total variable costs divided by output, it should give us what? Average variable cost, isn't it? Yeah, that's what we just said. That, by the way, variable cost and total variable cost is the same thing. Don't get confused. It's just the same thing. So how do we make it? How do we find now total variable cost? The schedule. How do we calculate for total variable cost? Obviously, we make the subject of the formula, isn't it? You just make this equation the subject of the formula, like make total variable the subject of the formula. By crossing multiply. This is basic algebra. So total variable cost will be equal to what? AVC times what? Times output, isn't it? Yeah, once you multiply now, AVC times output, it will give you the column for total variable cost. And now AVC is there. So to find that column, you just start multiplying. Just need to start multiplying, multiplying and multiplying. I'm saying that AVC, it is equal to TVC, total variable cost, over what? Output, right? If you want this, make it the subject of what? The formula. It will be total variable cost, that should be equal to average variable cost times what? Output. So we are just multiplying. Output, you know, our output is here, our variable cost, average variable cost is there. So we can fill in now this total variable cost column. Is output 1 times 110, that should give us 110, isn't it? 110. 2, what's that? 2 times 95. I need the very fast calculators.
190.
190. 3 times 80.
240.
Sorry?
240.
240 here. 4 times 75.
300.
300.
300.
Yes, sir.
300. The next one.
410.
210.
410.
Or 410. The next one. that times that.
$510.
500 and what? And 10. Okay, you just continue in that way, in short. Just continue up with the last figure. And that is the schedule for total variable what? Total variable costs. Are we fine? Are we all fine? And how we have come up with that? We have just basically used those same equations I've given you. Manipulated an equation a bit, just span a bit the equation so that it suits what you want and you can get the solutions. All right. The other question says, find total what? Total cost. How can we find total cost now? Total cost, how do you find total cost? Total cost is equal to what? Total variable cost plus total fixed what? Fixed cost, isn't it? And you know that the total fixed cost is 100. It's fixed at 100. So you just need to add to your what? To your variable costs. To each variable cost, 100 kwacha, so that you can get total cost, right? Those figures you are finding here, like for example, the first one we had the 110 here. You just say 110 plus this fixed cost. Variable cost is 110 here. Plus this, it gives us 210. That will be what? The column for total fixed cost. Total fixed cost, you're just adding these numbers that you're finding in here. Okay, the total variable costs column, these numbers, okay, you just add to them 100, which is the fixed cost. It will give you the what? The column for fixed costs. I'm no longer writing like in details because I believe you have gotten the concepts. We have tried out this thing again and again. So I'm working under an assumption that now, this time around, you're fine now with what you're doing. You know what is going on. Like we are adding variable cost plus one plus C, the fixed cost, which is just 100 kwacha. And it should give you the column for what? For total fixed cost. Honestly speaking, do I have anyone who has a challenge on that one first before I can proceed? You are free to ask. Please, you can do well to ask. It's a good thing. But am I clear? You might be talking to self.
Yeah, clear, sir.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So once you have found the total costs, the volume for total cost, I think the other schedule that you want is for what? For marginal cost. Obviously, if you have total cost, you can easily find marginal cost, right? Just, okay, following the previous examples, if you have the schedule for total costs, marginal cost cannot be a problem, isn't it? From what we just did previously, you can just be subtracting, you know, change in marginal cost, in total cost over the change in what? In outputs. Q, that should be able to give you the schedule for marginal costs. We have done this today 3 to 4 times. Even yesterday, we did it many times. So you should be fine this time around. Marginal revenue. Okay, now marginal revenue, you need total revenue. Okay, let's go back now. Okay. For you to find the marginal revenue, you need what? You need total revenue. Isn't it? You need total revenue. How do you find total revenue? You are just given average revenue. Check, this one is average revenue. And how do you find average revenue? It is basically total revenue divided by what? By output. Average revenue is equal to total revenue divided by what? By output. So to find total revenue, you need a column first for total revenue. For you to find the marginal what? The marginal revenue. Let's find the margin, the total revenue. We said total revenue will be just the average revenue times what? Output. That should give us the total revenue. Let's find the total revenue. Total revenue will be output times average revenue. The first one will be 300, right? Like output 1 times the average revenue 300, 300. 2 output times that is 5 what? 500. 3 times what is our output? 210. What is 3 times 210?
630.
630.
630. Okay, you continue like that. That column you will be building to the column for total revenue. Then if you have total revenue, then marginal revenue is easy, isn't it? The first one will be 300, just as it is. Then the next one will be 500. This 500 now minus 300 will be 200, right? 6030 minus 500, 100 and what? And 30. You continue just like that. That's how you find the column for marginal revenue. Did you get that? Hello. Hello.
Yes, we did.
Hello, hello, hello.
Oh, we are together, eh?
Yes, we are.
Okay. You know the difference between short run and long run period this time around. You no longer have challenges with that. That's what we know. Okay. May the co-host stop recording the class.